Nobody expected it. In a place known more for heat waves and dust than black gold, something shocking was discovered: oil. And not just a little, but billions of barrels, hidden beneath the dry lands of a country many had overlooked, Burkina Faso. So, what is Russia doing in this part of Africa? Why was this oil never found before? And what does this mean for the future of the region? Let's take a closer look. You wouldn't expect to find oil in the heart of the Sahel, where the land is cracked and the heat never lets up. Burkina Faso was never part of the oil conversation. It was known for cotton, not crude. But beneath the surface, a secret was waiting, one that could change everything. In early 2025, something unexpected was discovered deep beneath the dry, quiet land of Burkina Faso. An oil reserve so massive, it forced the world to rethink everything it believed about this overlooked country. For years, no major oil company gave Burkina Faso a second glance. Industry giants like ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total Energies focused on known oil hubs like Nigeria, Angola, and Algeria. Burkina Faso seemed too risky, too dry, and too isolated from major ports to be of any value. Investors were put off by its political instability, and exploration barely existed. But hidden beneath the surface was a huge deposit of oil, untouched and unnoticed by everyone except one: Russia. So, how did a Russian energy giant like Gazprom find what others had missed? The answer starts not in West Africa, but in Moscow. As Western sanctions piled up, Russia began quietly looking for new ways to expand its global reach, not with soldiers, but with energy deals. Oil and gas became tools of influence, and Africa became the next big target. Gazprom, backed by Russian government support and political strategy, began surveying places long ignored by others. Burkina Faso was a perfect match, disconnected from Western aid, led by a government open to new alliances, and in desperate need of new opportunities. Traoré's military-led government didn't just see Russia as a partner, they saw them as part of a new future for the country. In 2023, Gazprom teams arrived with high-tech tools, deep-scan satellite imaging, and advanced seismic equipment. They began exploring the north of the country quietly, without fanfare. Where others had seen only dry land, Russian scientists found signs of buried oil hydrocarbon pockets, hidden under ancient rock layers. They drilled in silence, relying on dust, data, and patience. No flashy announcements, no press coverage. Then, in early 2025, the results came in. Not a small find, not a maybe, but a massive discovery: 50 billion barrels of crude oil. This wasn't just news, it was history. A nation once known for exporting cotton and migrant labor had suddenly become a major energy player. And it wasn't just the amount that shocked people, it was the quality. The oil was light and sweet, perfect for making fuel, and worth a fortune on the global market. But how did oil end up here, in a landlocked, dry country far from ocean deltas or tectonic shifts? Scientists believe this region was once part of a vast inland sea, rich in organic material, buried for millions of years under layers of sediment, and untouched by major earthquakes, perfect conditions for forming oil. So why hadn't anyone found it earlier? Because no one had looked hard enough, and those who didn't have the tools Russia used. Western oil companies relied on outdated maps and weren't willing to deal with the challenges of operating in a landlocked country. Getting the oil out would take huge investments in roads, refineries, and pipelines. But Gazprom wasn't worried. Backed by Moscow's long-term strategy, they were playing the long game. Now, with the discovery confirmed and plans in motion, the impact could be huge. If managed well, this oil field could be worth nearly $3 trillion over time. Even with market ups and downs, political risks, and infrastructure costs, it still ranks among the biggest oil finds of the century. What makes this even more remarkable is who's running the show. This isn't a Western-led project with IMF funding and multinational boards. It's a military-run government, working with a sanctioned country, rewriting the rule book, and rejecting colonial-era deals. This oil could do more than power engines. It could shift power, reshape economies, and reduce the West's grip on parts of Africa. Still, despite the buzz, not a single barrel has been pumped yet. The government has promised its people that the oil won't be sold off to the highest bidder or lost to corruption. They say this oil will help build cities, not just bank accounts. But we've heard similar promises in places like Iraq, Angola, and Venezuela before. So, the real question isn't just how the oil got there, it's who gets to control it. Will Traoré's government truly protect the interests of the people? Or will outside forces swoop in? When the news broke that Burkina Faso had struck oil, Western diplomats scrambled. Is it true? They asked. Who's behind it? The answers didn't come from official briefings or press conferences. They came from what's already changing on the ground. Russia is moving in, and France, once the dominant power, is being pushed out. To really understand how all of this happened, you have to look beyond the oil fields and into the halls of power. This story isn't just about who found oil, it's about who Burkina Faso trusts to stand by them. For a long time, Burkina Faso was one of France's closest partners in West Africa, a solid part of what Paris quietly considered its backyard. French companies were involved in nearly everything from banks to telecom to roads. French soldiers were stationed in the country. The president often took guidance from French diplomats. On the surface, it seemed like a strong, unshakable relationship. But not everyone saw it that way. Over time, many Burkinabe began to feel that France's presence wasn't about protection, it felt more like control. Military missions like Operation Serval and Operation Barkhane were supposed to bring peace. Instead, violence from extremist groups only got worse. Corruption spread, and financial support from the West often came with strings attached that seemed to benefit France more than Burkina Faso. So when Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a young officer, overthrew the government in 2022, it wasn't just a change of leadership. It was a clear signal that Burkina Faso was ready to walk away from the old ways. It was a break from France and from a system that had shaped the country for decades. But Traoré wasn't just burning bridges. He was building new ones. Soon after, Russia began quietly making moves in Burkina Faso. Not through official treaties or embassies at first, but through private advisors, military consultants, and quiet talks behind closed doors. Traoré was looking for a partner without a colonial past, and Russia was eager to fill that role discreetly, but effectively. Instead of giving speeches, Traoré made bold moves. First, his government ended joint missions with the French military. Then they removed the diplomatic protections of French media and NGOs. In a dramatic move, France's ambassador was kicked out of the country, accused of interfering in domestic affairs. By the time the last French troops left, it wasn't just a military exit. It was a clear and public message. France no longer held the influence it once did in Burkina Faso. Russia stepped in without wasting time. In late 2023, Moscow reopened its embassy in Burkina Faso, its first in over 30 years. But this wasn't just paperwork and formalities. It was a statement. The Russian flag was now flying where the French once stood. At the same time, Russian military advisors began arriving quietly, not in convoys, but through low-key cooperation programs. They trained Burkinabe soldiers, supplied gear, and offered strategic help. Russian language classes even started showing up in military schools. Meanwhile, Gazprom entered talks behind the scenes to secure exclusive drilling rights in the oil-rich north. By the time the oil discovery was confirmed, Russia was already deeply involved. But why would Traoré put so much trust in Russia? The answer isn't about political ideology, it's about practicality. France wanted elections, reforms, anti-corruption campaigns all tied to its development aid. Russia offered something simpler: respect for sovereignty. The Kremlin didn't care who was in charge, as long as they could work together. While the West saw a coup leader, Moscow saw a strong partner. And for a new leader like Traoré, still finding his footing after taking power, that kind of loyalty was exactly what he needed. It wasn't just politics that brought Russia and Burkina Faso together, both sides had something to gain. Faced with sanctions and being cut off from global energy markets, Russia needed new places to explore for resources and prove it still had global reach. Partnering with a resource-rich African country gave Moscow exactly that. And for Burkina Faso, this wasn't just about oil or foreign alliances, it was about survival. When France pulled out, Burkina Faso was left to deal with rising tensions and growing insurgent threats. Russia stepped in with military support, no strings attached, no lectures about how to run the country. That breathing space gave Captain Traoré and his government a chance to focus. But it wasn't just the government that had lost faith in France. Many everyday people, especially in the cities, had already moved on. They saw France backing corrupt leaders and doing little to actually help fight terrorism. To them, Russia felt like a fresh start, no history of control, just cooperation. Then came the big news: oil. A lot of it. Instead of France or the West taking the lead, it was Burkina Faso and Russia deciding what came next. But real partnerships aren't proven by press releases, they're tested in moments of big change. And now, with oil confirmed, a big question is on the table. Who gets what? And how will this new wealth be used? For most countries, finding oil is the finish line, a chance to cash in. But in Burkina Faso, the discovery is being seen differently. Not as a jackpot, but as a tool, a starting point. President Traoré is pushing a bigger vision. This isn't just about boosting the economy, it's about reshaping the whole country. They don't want to become just another oil state. Instead, they're taking inspiration from further east, looking at the United Arab Emirates, places like Dubai. A small fishing village turned into a global hub of business, technology, and luxury. Oil started it, but smart planning kept it growing. That's the vision for Burkina Faso too. Use the oil not as a crutch, but as a launchpad. Behind the scenes, long-term plans are already being drafted. Infrastructure deals are being tied directly to oil revenues and shares in production. Under agreements with Gazprom, Burkina Faso is reportedly getting partial ownership in key facilities like refineries, pipelines, and storage systems. This marks a major shift from the usual setup, where foreign companies control the entire supply chain, and African nations are left with only small earnings in the form of rent or royalties. It's not about exporting raw oil anymore. The plan is to refine it at home, create real value, and then export finished products like jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline, not just to nearby countries, but to the rest of Africa as well. Burkina Faso's Ministry of Energy has already outlined 3 key industrial routes. These energy-driven development corridors will stretch toward Mali in the north, Niger in the east, and Ghana in the south. But it's not just about oil refineries. These plans include new cities, schools, housing, and train lines, turning solar-powered industrial zones into places where clean energy and oil work side by side. The idea is to turn the country's landlocked position into a strategic advantage through better transportation links. At this point, many outsiders start to laugh. They think it's too bold, too unrealistic. Because turning a country like Burkina Faso into a major trading force takes more than just resources. It takes time, political stability, and strong leadership. But Traoré and his team don't seem bothered by the doubts. In fact, they're counting on being underestimated. This isn't some dream that can't come true. From a development perspective, it's a strategic challenge to the global system. Traoré is openly rejecting the debt-driven growth model pushed by the West. No more waiting on climate funds or relying on the IMF. If help doesn't come, they'll build their future themselves with their oil, their people, and trusted partners. And it's not just about oil. Over the past year, Burkina Faso has restructured its mining sector, renegotiated many international deals, and launched local companies to manage everything from farming logistics to gold transport. The expected income from oil will support these broader plans. These include a government-owned development bank to support local businesses and a fund for young tech innovators so they don't have to leave the country to succeed. Some signs of progress are already showing. A local company, Les Moulandou Sahel, is now exporting Burkinabe rice to neighboring countries. It's a small but powerful sign of what real independence could look like. The Traoré administration is calling this a new way of governing in Africa, one where wealth circulates inside the country rather than leaking out. Critics say it's too ambitious. How can a country still dealing with unrest and conflict become a regional leader in just a decade? But they're missing what's really happening. A shift in mindset. For the first time in many years, a leader in Burkina Faso isn't asking for pity or patience. He's asking people to help build. The oil is just the start. To avoid falling into the same corruption traps that hurt other African oil nations, the government is setting up digital tracking for oil funds. Transparency dashboards are being tested, allowing citizens to see where oil money is going, which towns are getting infrastructure, and how petroleum revenue fits into the national budget. If this works, and it's a big if, Burkina Faso won't just be producing oil. It will be building trust in its institutions, investing in its people, and proving it deserves to chart its own course. The road ahead is uncertain, and the risks are real, but the vision is clear. Burkina Faso doesn't want to become a copy of Nigeria or any other country. It wants to be its own original success story. But with every bold move comes pressure from inside the country and far beyond its borders. And that pressure is already building. Yet Traoré remains steady. No threats, no sabotage, no foreign pressure seems to shake his focus. He knows exactly what's at stake, and he knows who's watching. For years, Burkina Faso was treated as just another poor country with rich resources. Foreign powers took what they wanted, signed shady deals, and offered crumbs in return. But this time, it's different. Traoré is not just leading a government, he's rewriting history. He wants every resource, every drop of oil, to benefit the people who live on the land. No more middlemen, no more leftover systems from colonial times, no more aid that only makes the country more dependent. He's pushing forward with a bold dream, a future where Burkinabe people truly own their land and control what happens on it. No outside pressure, media spin, or political noise can distract him. Because this isn't just about politics, it's about legacy, it's about pride. And above all, Traoré is saying one thing loud and clear. Burkina Faso's future will be decided by its own people. What do you think? Will he succeed? Can Burkina Faso achieve all this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more content that shines a light on Africa's real stories, its history, its heroes, and its power, Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell for updates. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.